My fellow beautiful boxing fan, after watching nearly every single Canelo fight available, and after watching nearly every single Bud Crawford fight available on the internet, I think I know the exact punch that Canelo will use to stop Terence Bud Crawford in his tracks. Let's get into it, but please let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Let's get into it, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, Terence Bud Crawford will fight this fight, in my opinion, mostly in the southpaw stance. So all you gotta do is look at the perfect punch when it comes to Canelo Alvarez throwing versus slick southpaws who got crack and who got respectable power in their lead hand. You won't find much like Crawford, no question, ladies and gentlemen. It doesn't get... There will never be another Canelo Alvarez, but there will also never be another Terence Bud Crawford. When you look at their styles, their charisma inside the ring. But based on Crawford's style and based on Canelo's shot selection, check this out, ladies and gentlemen. Canelo Alvarez, when he fights southpaws, he does this trick. I mean, look, if you look at all Canelo's fights versus orthodox fighters and all of Canelo's fights versus southpaws, you can tell that Canelo finds it a bit more awkward to fight southpaws. Why? Because nearly every single fighter in boxing finds it awkward, but that doesn't mean that he's not effective. That doesn't mean that he can't beat every single one of them. Check this out. When he fights southpaws, for example, Billy Joe, what did he do to set up Billy Joe? For him to be opened up for that uppercut that finished him and broke his face. The left hook to the body and then the left hook to the head. But when you talk about the left hook versus a southpaw, there is a blind spot, ladies and gentlemen. For example, for Terence Bud Crawford, his blind spot, him will be in the southpaw stance, it will be here. Because he will be looking to counter you with the lead hand, Crawford, and discipline you with the lead hand, but also, you know, if you get out of line and if you are in his range, he will unload the backhand. But if you go back and watch the Errol Spence versus Crawford fight, the only punch that Errol Spence landed on Crawford was the left hand landing on Crawford's blind spot. And especially with Spence being a southpaw. Now, if you go back and watch Canelo versus Lara and Canelo versus Billy Joe, Canelo, before he landed any left hook to the head, he was feinting to the body and landing to the body and feinting to the body, landing to the body, feinting to the body, landing to the body, feinting to the body, landing to the head. But once he landed to the head, his opponents started to see it as a threat. So what did they do? They started to try to remove that blind spot by moving here. And by moving here, what happens? He lands the uppercut to knock you out and finish you. And what did he do versus Billy Joe? He kept doing this trick. And after Billy Joe got pieced up on his right side with Canelo's left hand, listen. I don't like to brag, but go back to my old videos. You know, in 2021, I posted a few videos and then I stopped posting until now. Go back and watch. I did a breakdown for Billy Joe versus Canelo and I broke down the finish exactly. I said that later on in the fight, after Canelo punches his body, Billy Joe will start dipping and he will dip into Canelo's right uppercut and Canelo will finish him with the right uppercut. And Canelo did the exact same thing. So, you know, as the fight edges closer, I'm going to give out my prediction on how I think this fight will play out. But, of course, I'm not comparing Billy Joe to Crawford. Don't get me wrong, ladies and gentlemen. Crawford is 10 levels above Billy Joe, 100%. You know that Billy Joe, 60% of Billy Joe's punches are jabs. And if you look at Billy Joe's jabs, Billy Joe doesn't have a jab that disciplines you. He throws a flicking jab, you know. Just like Tyson Fury throws his jab from the southpaw stance. When Tyson Fury goes in the southpaw stance and throws his jab, it's more of like a stay away from me jab. That's 60% of Billy Joe's punches are like that. And if you look at every single Billy Joe knockout, he knocked out literally like 47 pounders and tomato cans. Billy Joe has never dropped anyone at the elite level and high level. His only fight at the true elite level versus an elite fighter in their prime was Canelo. So Billy Joe, I believe that he's very, very overrated. But nonetheless, this trick that I just told you about, this is what Canelo will use versus Crawford. And if you actually go back and watch that Billy Joe fight, you will see one thing Canelo does different when you compare it to all his recent fights. Versus William Skull, Canelo started very slow. Versus John Ryder, he started slow but not that slow. Versus Munguia, started slow but not that slow. Versus Charlo, started slow, but versus Billy Joe, in the first round, in the first minute, Canelo, even though he didn't throw a lot of punches, but he started quick. He immediately started to figure out how to close the distance, how to cut off Billy Joe, how to stifle his attacks, he exhausted Billy Joe with the feints. He feinted with his lead hand, with his backhand, with his lead foot, with his eyes, with his shoulders. Canelo was feinting. Billy Joe's alarm systems were going off early. And that is why, in my opinion, that was Canelo's best shape and performance in the last few years. And if you go back and watch Canelo's shape in that fight, Canelo was lighter than all of his fights when you compare them. He was lighter than the Caleb Plant fight. He looked lighter. His feet, his legs were smaller. His upper body was smaller, less muscle mass, more ripped, more defined, and quicker. And if you look at he was lighter than he looked versus Plant. Lighter than the fight versus Skull. Lighter even than the Charlo fight, even though he was light for the Charlo fight. He was lighter for the Charlo fight, way lighter than the Skull fight. And way lighter than the Munguia and Berlanga fights. But I get why. The only fight where I can't blame him for being heavy was the Munguia fight. Because he had to gain Munguia's respect early. Because if you actually look at that Munguia fight, which is one of my favorite Canelo fights, for some reason, the first 3 to 4 rounds, it was 50-50. I thought Munguia was going to win. Munguia was like a psycho. He was getting hit with bombs and he wasn't flinching. But now we know why, after him testing positive for an anabolic steroid. Injectable anabolic steroid, Munguia tested positive for. So what does that tell you? Shame on Munguia. But nonetheless, getting back to my main point, Canelo in that fight, he had to be heavy. But in this fight, I know exactly what his game plan will be. And his shape, for this camp, if you watch his shape tells you everything you want to know. He's coming in the exact same shape that he came in versus Billy Joe. Lighter than ever, shredded, and quick on his feet. If you look at all his videos shadow boxing now, he's light on his feet. If you look back at the Billy Joe fight, he was so light on his feet versus Billy Joe. He was so slow on his feet versus Berlanga and Munguia and William Skull. But in this fight, listen, Canelo, I believe, is turning back time. Well, you can't really turn back time, but you know what I mean. Like, not literally, but figuratively. He's turning back time. He's getting back to his old ways of doing a lot of cardio, of staying light on his feet while shadow boxing, while training, while doing his defensive drills, while doing his offensive drills, while sparring, always trying to pick his feet up. Because if you actually think about it, special fighters like Canelo and Crawford, you gotta give them a tough task for them to get up. You gotta give them a tough task for them to do that extra rep, go that extra mile, spar that extra round, lose that extra pound, sleep an hour earlier, Wake up an hour earlier. You know what I mean? And I believe this Crawford fight did that to Canelo. The proof? Look at his shape. Look at his demeanor. The man looks so happy. Look at his sparring partners. And lastly and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, look at him, Canelo, the individual, the human, the soul, the spirit. Even though he's older than ever, but his demeanor, his facial expression, the way that he talks, the way that he's carrying himself lately, even though he's older than ever, but he looks younger than ever. When you talk about his spirit, and why, I'll tell you why. Because special fighters like Canelo, they live and they thrive off special, high octane, high pressure moments and situations. And the pressure doesn't get any higher than this. Every single belt in boxing on the line. Allegiant Stadium, first boxing match ever in Allegiant Stadium, Las Vegas. Tens of thousands of screaming fans, like a football stadium, like I said. Versus Bud Crawford, someone in the top 3 pound for pound. Last time Canelo fought someone like top 3 pound for pound was Golovkin, I believe. If ever. Last time Canelo fought a switch hitter, never. You know, I'm telling you, like so many things leading up to this fight and so many things in this fight made Canelo go like, okay, let me roll up my sleeves and let me show them, and most importantly, show myself how great I am. Come on, how much do you give me on this promotional job? 10 out of 10. Bring on September the 13th. Terence Crawford, one of the greatest fighters I have ever seen, versus Saul Canelo Alvarez, one of the greatest fighters of all time. Bring on September 13th. It will be a night, I promise you. You and I will never, ever, ever forget.